Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Oh, yeah.
Today we're going to Ethiopia,
Okay.
a country that's really changing a lot.
Yeah.
Especially when you look at their economy and all the stuff they're building.
Yeah.
We've got a ton of articles.
Wow.
Some are about economic development, some about what the government's planning,
Okay.
and then others about how all this is affecting people.
Right.
So it's going to be a really interesting mix.
It is interesting because we're not just talking like big ideas.
Yeah.
We're actually going to hear what people are saying.
Exactly.
Like business owners,
Yeah.
investors, people in the government, even some economists.
It's like we're getting the inside scoop.
Right. We're going to see what's happening
Yeah, what's really going on.
on the ground.
And, you know, we're focusing on two main places.
Okay.
Addis Abeba, the capital city, and Sidama region,
Oh, yeah. Sidama.
which is famous for its coffee.
Of course. Famous for coffee.
But, you know, it makes you think,
About
what does progress really look like?
Yeah.
And who's actually benefiting
from all this change?
from all these changes?
Yeah. That's the big question.
All right, let's jump in.
Okay.
Our first theme is
Huh.
the growing pains of a modernizing economy.
Okay.
And we're starting with something that seems a little backward.
What's that?
Electric vehicles.
Oh, really?
You would think
Yeah.
that a government trying to be more eco-friendly would have this all figured out.
You think so?
Right.
Well, they're trying.
Yeah.
Their hearts are in the right place.
Yeah.
But the plans haven't caught up.
Yeah.
So back in 2023,
Okay.
Ethiopia decided to ban all those gas-guzzling cars.
Wow. So no more gasoline cars.
Nope. They wanted to depend less on foreign oil
Makes sense.
and, of course, help the environment.
Yeah.
They even made all these safety rules
Oh, yeah.
for these new electric vehicles.
That one.
But they forgot one really important thing:
What's that?
how to charge them.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. It seems obvious.
Yeah, of course you need places to charge them.
Right. You need charging stations everywhere.
But the government didn't make any rules for that.
So nobody knows how to build them
Everywhere to build them.
or who's in charge of them.
It's a mess.
It is. And it's a problem for everyone.
Like who?
We'll take Ethiopian Electric Power.
EP.
Yeah, EP. They're the main electricity company.
Right.
And they agreed to build 500 charging stations.
And that's a lot.
It was a huge project, millions of dollars,
Wow.
but now everything's on hold.
Because there are no rules.
Exactly. Nobody knows what to do.
And it's not just the big companies.
Right.
Imagine you're a smaller company,
Okay.
like Green Tech Africa,
Yeah.
and you're trying to do the right thing,
Yeah.
building a charging station,
Okay.
and then suddenly it gets demolished.
Why?
Because the city needs that land
Oh,
for a new road.
so frustrating.
Talk about bad timing.
Really bad timing. And this uncertainty,
Yeah.
it makes investors nervous.
Like who?
Like big fuel companies, like
Okay.
Libya Oil, Total Energies.
Yeah.
They don't want to invest in charging stations.
Because they don't know the rules.
Right. What if the rules change tomorrow?
Yeah. Why risk their money?
Exactly. It's like playing a game.
Yeah.
And you don't even know the rules.
Nobody wants to do that.
And then you have companies who import or assemble these electric vehicles.
Right.
And they're stuck.
Why are they stopped?
They need standard charging equipment.
So one charger works for every car.
Exactly. But those standards,
Yeah.
they just don't exist yet.
It's like the Wild West out there.
Kinda. And it's not just missing rules.
What else is there?
Think about practical problems, too.
Right.
A lot of the first electric vehicles,
Yeah.
they used lead-acid batteries,
Okay.
which are not as good.
How so?
They don't last as long
Oh.
as newer lithium-ion batteries.
Okay.
And they can be bad for the environment.
So they're kind of going backwards.
In a way, so what does this mean for Ethiopia?
It means even when the government is trying to do something good, they need a plan
A clear plan.
and they need to stick to it
All right. Otherwise,
Really?
it hurts businesses.
and slows down progress.
Exactly. It's a lesson for everyone.
It is. And this isn't just an Ethiopia problem.
No, not all.
This happens everywhere.
Think about any big change with new technology or a new policy.
Anywhere in the world.
Yeah, the details matter.
The details make or break the whole thing.
Exactly.
Okay, so from electric cars,
Okay.
let's go to another example of a good idea that maybe didn't go as planned.
Okay. Where are we going?
We're going to the Mercato,
Oh, wow. The Mercato.
the heart of Addis Abeba.
That's a huge market.
Massive. It's a bustling open-air market,
I've heard about it.
probably one of the biggest you can imagine.
And what's happening there?
A sudden crackdown on taxes
Oh, wow.
is really shaking things up.
So imagine this.
Yeah.
You're a small business owner.
Okay.
You've had your shop in the Mercato
Yeah.
for years. you're just trying to make a living?
Yeah.
And then suddenly, you get this letter
For who?
from the tax people
Oh, no.
threatening a huge fine
What?
and maybe even legal trouble
That's scary.
if you don't start giving receipts
Receipts
for everything.
for every single thing you sell?
Even stuff you've had for a long time.
Yeah, not just new stuff.
So you can imagine the stress.
Especially for smaller traders
Yeah.
who maybe didn't keep good records.
It's a nightmare for them.
The government says they warned everyone about these new rules,
Okay.
but the shopkeepers are saying,
What are they saying?
this came out of nowhere.
They weren't ready.
And there's a bigger problem.
What's that?
They buy their goods from bigger suppliers
Okay.
who don't give them receipts.
So they can't comply?
Exactly. It's a catch-22.
So what's the city gonna do?
The mayor, Addis Abeba,
Yeah.
she's serious about this.
What she's saying.
Pay your taxes or else.
Wow. No mercy.
The city needs money.
To provide services, build things the country needs. But a lot of people are unhappy.
About how it's being done.
Exactly. Some economists are saying what Ethiopia really needs
Yeah.
is a fairer tax system.
So not just targeting the little guys,
Right. One that goes after the big companies.
the ones who aren't paying their fair share.
Excellent.
Okay.
It's a tough situation.
It is. The government needs money
But they can't just squeeze small businesses.
without fixing the bigger problems.
Right. The ones that let some people
Yeah.
avoid paying taxes altogether.
And speaking of trying to fix big systems,
What now?
the Ethiopian government is trying to overhaul
Overhaul what?
its entire civil service.
Wow. That's a huge undertaking.
Big changes for the more than 2 million people
Wow, 2 million.
who work for the government.
What kind of changes?
They're talking about pay raises,
Okay.
new training programs,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe even changing
Changing what?
the role of government
In what way?
as the main employer in the country.
That's ambitious.
It is. But will it work?
Will it fix the problems?
That's the big question.
So tell me more about these changes.
Well, they are increasing salaries,
Good.
but not equally for everyone.
How so?
The lowest paid workers
Okay.
will see a bigger jump.
Which they need.
They desperately need it,
Right.
but those earning more
Mm-hmm.
will see a much smaller increase.
I see.
And even with these raises,
Yeah.
some people are worried
Worried about what?
they still won't be able to keep up
With what?
with the rising cost of living.
That makes sense. Inflation is high.
It is. And it's making everything more expensive.
Right.
One civil servant,
Yeah.
Meselek Kariku,
Okay.
told us that even with the raise, it's getting harder
Harder to what?
to make ends meet.
It's a real concern.
It is. And this reform also brings up
What's that?
the question of inclusivity in government.
Oh, interesting.
The government says
Yeah.
that having people from different backgrounds,
Okay.
different ethnic and religious groups,
Working in the civil service.
yeah, will make things more efficient.
And more transparent.
Exactly.
But are people on board with this?
Well, some members of parliament disagree.
They do.
They worry
but
that,
I worry about.
that if you focus too much on ethnicity,
Uh-huh.
you might end up with people in jobs
Yeah.
who aren't actually qualified.
So it could backfire.
It could.
Yeah.
And that could hurt the quality.
Of the services they provide.
Exactly.
So it's a balancing act.
It is.
Yeah.
How do you make sure
Yeah.
the government reflects the country
Mhm.
without sacrificing competence
Right.
and skill?
That's the challenge.
And on top of that,
There's more.
people like Jamal Mohammed,
Okay.
a development economist,
Who studies what?
labor markets,
Oh, yeah.
are wondering
Or what?
how these changes will actually work.
Yeah, in practice.
He thinks that simply giving everyone more money
Yeah.
might not be enough.
He has a point.
He suggests other types of support,
Like what?
like providing affordable housing
Okay.
might be more effective.
Interesting. So it's not just about the money.
Right. It's about a whole package of things.
That actually improved people's lives.
Exactly.
Seems like a lot of questions.
There are. It'll be interesting to see what happens.
It will.
But before we get too deep into that,
Okay.
let's talk about how these changes
Yeah.
and challenges are affecting
Uh,
the look and feel of Addis Ababa itself.
because the city's changing too.
It is. It's going through a major makeover.
And that's having some interesting consequences.
This is where things get really interesting.
Okay, tell me more.
Addis Ababa has been holding these land auctions
Land auctions for what?
to attract developers
Okay.
and transform the city.
So they're selling land.
Yeah, to people who will build new things.
New buildings, new businesses.
Exactly. The idea is to modernize the city.
Sounds good.
But
What
what's
about-
the catch? fewer and fewer people
Really?
are showing up to these auctions.
Even in good locations. Even in prime locations. Like where? Like the Orada district.
That's a prime business area.
It is. And the contrast is striking.
How so?
Last year, hundreds of people
Wow.
were bidding for land in Orada.
Okay.
This year, practically empty.
What? Only a few people showed up.
Only 15 bidders.
What happened?
That's the question.
What are people saying?
Well, there are a few different opinions.
Okay, let's hear them.
So, Chorrell Abraham,
Okay.
who's in charge of land transfers
At the city?
at the city's land administration,
Right.
thinks the lower prices are good.
Why is that good?
It could mean the market is stabilizing.
Okay, so less risky,
Exactly.
but not everyone agrees.
Right.
Who else do we have?
Elias Tickley,
Okay,
a lawyer who specializes in land disputes.
so he knows this stuff.
He does.
Oh, yeah.
He says the problem is
What is it?
all the new rules and regulations.
So more bureaucracy,
Exactly.
and that makes it expensive to build.
So expensive and risky.
That investors are staying away. Makes sense. Nobody wants to lose money.
And he's also worried about fairness.
Oh, what does he mean?
He says a lot of these new developments
Yeah.
are pushing out the people who already live there.
Oh, no, it's not right.
It's not. He says they can't afford to stay.
So they get displaced
They get pushed to the outskirts.
where there are fewer opportunities.
Exactly.
So basically, the rich get richer.
And the poor get poorer.
It doesn't seem fair
It's a problem. He's calling for a different approach.
to development,
Yeah. One that benefits everyone.
not just the wealthy.
He says a lot of these new developments,
Yeah.
they lack basic infrastructure,
Like what?
like water and electricity.
Really?
So it's like building a fancy house,
Yeah.
but with no running water.
Or lights.
It looks good,
Yeah.
but it's not practical.
So is this making inequality worse?
That's a big worry.
Yeah.
As richer people move in,
Yeah.
are lower income residents being pushed further away?
From the opportunities?
It's a pattern we see in cities everywhere.
So is there a better way?
There are cities
Yeah.
that have managed to modernize
Without creating huge gaps.
between the rich and the poor.
What do they do differently?
They focused on affordable housing,
Okay.
public transportation.
So everyone can get around.
Right, and they made sure new developments
Yeah.
benefit the whole community.
So the big question for Addis Ababa is,
Can they do the same
can they learn from these other cities?
and create a future where everyone benefits?
That's a debate that's going to continue.
As the city keeps changing.
But it's an important question.
It is, because the decisions they make today
Will affect
for generations to come.
Okay, now let's leave the busy capital
Okay, where are we going now?
and head south to the Sidama region,
Back to Sidama.
where they're facing a completely different problem.
Oh, what's that?
And it all comes down to something most of us take for granted:
What's that?
fuel.
Fuel. Oh, wow.
The Sidama region is dealing with a major fuel shortage.
No,
And it's causing chaos.
in the black market.
Exactly. Benzene,
Okay,
which is a type of fuel,
right.
is selling for 60%
60% higher.
higher than the official price.
Wow. That's like
Oh,
paying a fortune for gas.
And even though the government is
Yeah.
trying to stop this illegal trade,
Hmm.
it's still thriving.
People need fuel.
They do.
Mm.
And it's simple supply and demand.
Right. When something's scarce.
People will find a way to sell it.
Even if it means charging a crazy price.
So the fuel shortage
Yeah.
has become a blame game.
Who's blaming who?
Well, regional officials are blaming greedy people.
People who just want to make a quick buck.
Exactly.
Hmm.
But the fuel distributors
Yeah.
are saying it's not that simple.
They have their own problems.
They do. They don't trust the government's plan
Which plan?
to make everyone pay for fuel
Okay.
using Ethio Telecom's mobile money.
Telever?
Yeah. They're worried it could make things worse.
Oh, no. So there are a lot of different groups involved.
There are. The regional government,
The fuel distributors?
Right.
Ethio Telecom?
who runs the mobile money,
And even the software developers.
who have to make the system work.
So many moving parts.
It's complicated. And all these groups,
Yeah.
they have different goals,
Different priorities.
which makes finding a solution really hard.
It does. And to make matters worse,
Oh, there's more.
this new law
When new law.
to regulate the fuel industry
Oh,
might not even be the answer.
why not?
Well, Sir Callum Christos,
Wow.
who's an expert in this field,
So he knows what he's talking about.
he does. He says the law focuses too much on
Punishing
people
people?
who are already breaking the rules.
Exactly. And not enough on
Fixing the system.
making the legal supply chain work better
It's like putting a bandage.
on a broken arm.
It doesn't really solve the problem.
Sometimes the best way to fix a problem
Yeah.
isn't to come down hard on people,
Right.
but to build a system,
That works for everyone.
and we'll have to leave that thought there for now.
We'll come back to it.
Because we've only just scratched the surface.
Of what's happening in Ethiopia
It's a complex situation,
with a lot of different factors.
but we'll keep digging.
In the next part of our deep dive,
Stay tuned.
there's more to come.
Welcome back to our deep dive into Ethiopia.
It's amazing how all these things are connected.
I know, right?
Like we started with those electric vehicles,
Yeah.
needing charging stations. Then we went to taxes.
Yeah.
And now these big changes in the government.
It's all part of the same story.
It shows how a country changing this much
Yeah.
has to deal with so many things at once.
It's a lot to juggle.
And the
Yeah.
more we learn,
Yeah.
the more we see the people,
Behind all of this.
not just the numbers and policies.
That's right. It's about people's lives.
Exactly.
And for this part of our deep dive,
Okay,
we're going back to Addis Abeba.
back to the capital.
But this time we're focusing on
On what?
how the city itself is changing.
Oh, interesting.
All this new development.
Mm.
New buildings, businesses, roads,
It's reshaping the whole city,
and we'll see how that's affecting
people who live there.
the people who call it home.
So let's look closer at those land auctions.
The ones we talked about earlier.
Right, where the government sells land to developers
And the idea is to attract investment.
and modernize the city.
Exactly. But like we said before, people aren't as interested in buying land anymore.
Even in those prime locations.
That's a sign that something's not quite right.
It makes you wonder,
What?
is Addis Ababa growing in the right way?
Is it sustainable?
Some people say the city's too focused on building
Like-
fancy things for profit.
Like luxury apartments?
Yeah, shopping malls.
Things that look good in photos?
But they say there's not enough.
Of what people actually need.
Affordable housing,
Basic infrastructure.
good roads, reliable electricity.
The things that make a city livable.
It's like putting all your money.
Into a fancy sports car.
When your house has a leaky roof.
You've got to get your priorities straight.
And Elias Tekle,
The lawyer we talked about.
yeah, the one who specializes in land issues.
He's very vocal about this.
What does he say?
He says these development projects
Yeah.
are pushing out the people who already live there.
Oh, no. So they can't afford to stay.
Exactly. They're being displaced.
To make room for wealthier people.
And big companies.
It doesn't seem fair.
It's a common story, unfortunately.
What's he proposing?
He wants a more balanced approach to development,
Okay.
one that benefits everyone.
Not just the wealthy.
He says these new developments
Yeah.
often lack basic things,
Like what?
water and electricity.
Really? So you have these shiny new buildings,
Yeah,
but they're not functional.
not really. It's all for show.
It raises a big question.
What's that?
Is all this development making inequality worse?
Are the rich getting richer?
And the poor getting pushed further out?
Or they have fewer opportunities?
It's a pattern we see happening in so many cities.
So is there another way?
There are cities that have done it differently.
Yeah.
They managed to modernize
Yeah.
without creating these huge gaps.
Between the haves and have-nots.
What did they do?
They focused on affordable housing.
Okay, so people can actually afford to live there.
Right. And they invested in public transportation.
So everyone can get around easily.
Even if they don't have a car.
And they made sure that new development
Yeah.
benefits the whole community.
Not just a select few.
So can Addis Ababa learn from them?
That's the million-dollar question.
Can they find a way to grow?
In a way that's fair and equitable.
That's a debate that's going to continue.
As the city evolves,
And the decisions they make now
will have long-term consequences.
for everyone.
Okay. Now let's shift gears again.
Okay.
Back to the Sidama region.
Back to the fuel shortage.
It's actually about much more than just high prices.
What do you mean?
It's about how people live their daily lives.
Oh, yeah.
In Sidama, fuel is essential
For what?
for everything farmers need it.
To transport their crops.
Businesses need it to run their machines.
Okay.
People need it to get to work and school.
So when there's not enough fuel,
It throws everything off.
it disrupts everything.
And even though the government's trying to stop,
the black market?
the black market is still thriving.
People are desperate.
And one of the biggest problems
Yeah.
is that nobody really knows
What?
where the fuel is coming from
Or where it's going.
or who's profiting.
It's a mystery.
A very opaque system.
So who's to blame?
Well, that's the problem.
Yeah.
Everyone's blaming each other.
So tell me who's saying what?
Regional officials are blaming greedy individuals.
The ones who are hoarding fuel.
But the fuel distributors
Yeah.
are blaming the government's new payment system.
The one with Teleber.
And experts are saying
What are they saying?
the whole system needs an overhaul.
From top to bottom.
And some people worry
About what?
that the solutions being proposed
Yeah.
could actually make things worse. Like the plan to put security cameras,
In every gas station.
it might deter some illegal activity,
But it doesn't solve the root problem.
which is the shortage itself.
And what about the Teleber plan?
The one to integrate mobile money?
Into the fuel supply chain.
Well, some distributors are worried.
Why are they worried?
They think it'll give Ethio Telecom too much power
And make it harder for smaller businesses.
to compete.
So it could create a new set of problems.
It's a classic example of how
Well.
technology isn't always the answer,
Sometimes it can make things worse.
if it's not done right.
We're seeing this clash
Yeah,
between modernization and reality.
between the formal and the informal.
And it's affecting millions of people.
It's a theme we keep seeing
As we explore Ethiopia's journey,
of transformation
it's a complex process.
with a lot of moving parts.
And in the final part of our deep dive,
Yeah.
we'll wrap up our exploration
And think about what it all means.
for Ethiopia's future.
But more importantly, we want to hear from you.
Wow.
We've really learned a lot about Ethiopia.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey.
From those electric vehicles that can't get charged
Hmm.
to all the problems in the Mercato
Right.
and those huge changes the government's trying to make.
It's a lot to take in.
It's clear that modernization isn't always easy,
It comes with its own set of challenges.
like we saw with those government policies.
Yeah. Sometimes they sound great on paper.
But then, in reality,
They don't quite work out as planned.
and we saw how important it is to balance economic growth with making sure everyone benefits.
Not just a select few.
In Addis Abeba, it feels like there's this tension
Yeah.
between wanting a modern city.
And the needs of the people who actually live there.
Those empty land auctions are telling
They make you think.
about who benefits from all this development.
Exactly. Is it just about creating a city for tourists?
Or a city for everyone.
And then in Sidama,
With the fuel crisis,
it shows how fragile things can be.
when you don't have enough of something essential.
Like fuel. It affects everything.
And we saw how those simple solutions
Like cracking down on the black market,
don't always work.
you have to look at the whole system
The formal and the informal.
and how they all connect.
It's complicated.
It is. But these challenges aren't unique to Ethiopia.
You see them all over the world.
Countries trying to modernize.
Yeah, trying to adapt to all these changes.
Globalization, technology, growing population.
So if we step back, what are the big lessons here?
What can we learn from Ethiopia?
I think transparency is key.
In government and in business?
When decisions are made in secret,
Yeah. Without any accountability.
it creates problems.
Corruption, inefficiency, inequality.
And even the best ideas
Like electric vehicles or mobile money.
can backfire if they're not done right.
You have to understand the local context.
How will that affect people?
What are the unintended consequences?
And most importantly,
what's that?
make sure everyone benefits from progress.
Not just a small elite.
Because if you leave people behind,
Yeah.
it creates more problems down the road.
Instability, unrest, lack of trust.
So let's imagine for a minute,
Okay.
you're a foreign investor.
Thinking about putting money into Ethiopia
What advice would you give them?
based on what we've learned
What are the risks?
and what are the opportunities
This is your chance to really think critically.
about the challenges and possibilities.
Because our deep dive is just the beginning.
It's up to all of us to keep learning,
Asking questions
forming our own conclusions
about these complex issues.
that are shaping Ethiopia and the world.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive,
We hope you learned something new.
and that you'll keep exploring these topics
Keep asking those tough questions.
and keep diving deep.